Our theme for gathering this evening is wisdom, and the 3 times of interlude the sharing here all deal with music that points to wisdom. And at the start of each one of those 3 times, I'll just say a little about what you're going to hear. This first piece is an offering by the 12th century mystic, naturalist, scientist, linguist. She was all things, Hildegard von Bingen. And she wrote a symphony of prayer songs, and one of those in there was her hymn, O Strength of Wisdom. And I'd just like to share the words that went with this and one other observation on the music that speaks to what she's communicating here. This was the poem she wrote and then set to music. O strength of wisdom, who circled enclosing all in one life-giving path. 3 wings you have. 1 soars to the heights. 1 distills its essence upon the earth. And the 3rd is everywhere. Praise to you as is fitting, O wisdom. She has that central image of wisdom, 3 wings, touching the heavens, touching the earth, going round about and everywhere. And that works into the form of music she chose, she worked with. In writing this hymn, she chose to use the darkest of the modes available in medieval music. We have 2, major and minor. They had 7, there were 6 of them they used, and the darkest one was the Phrygian. And she chose the darkest, but then, and you'll hear this in the notes, she infused it with these melodic runs that move and sometimes exciting jumps. And she essentially infused that darkness with joy. And that's a way of saying the same thing that she did in the poem, that wisdom is absolutely everywhere. It holds the darkness, it holds the joy. Strength of wisdom.
I would invite David Nelson to come and light our community candle, and Peter Moore will lead us in our prayer of blessing our time together.
Please join me in the responsive reading of this prayer. Creator God, we always ask before we thank, for we are asking creatures. We ask for love, and thank you for the love you have inspired in us. We ask to be closer to you, and thank you for our capacity to pray. We ask for your understanding, and thank you for bringing us the light of your presence. We ask for happiness, and thank you for the joy of life. We ask for strength, and thank you for the courage you have given us to hope. We ask for your presence, and thank you for living in our hearts. We ask, and we have already received. Blessed be your name, O God, our Creator. Amen.
We now hear 3 songs of wisdom for the marginalized. The marginalized in our societies have, we know, a special wisdom to speak. It's not something we can sentimentalize. We can't deny the pain that's there. But out of the pain, out of the isolation, they have special words to speak. And so we'll hear a triad, and I'll just say something about each one of the songs in the triad. The first of these is Father James' song. Father James was an early Shaker. The Shakers were persecuted in England. They came to the United States in hope of finding greater freedom. They began to find it, but then one day in the Boston area where they had first settled, Father James, who was one of their leaders, was severely beaten. And after he was beaten, he sang a song. The song had no words. It was just feeling and intent. People never set words to it. But the song we'll hear has a very simple movement to it. There's pain in it. There's wondering. You can hear movements toward resolution. But the one thing that you never hear in that song is vengeance for what was done to him. The second song is also from the Shakers, Canterbury Solemn Song. One of the forms of music that the Shakers had was the solemn song. We're familiar with "'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free," and all the wonderful lilting quality of that and other music. But they also, again in their isolation, developed deep senses of presence and solemnity. There's a story, and actually it's history, this is a real event. After they left the Boston area, they settled for a time, and then many stayed in an area near Albany, Schenectady, Troy, New York. And when they settled there, a congregational minister down in Poughkeepsie was sent up to find out what on earth are these different people doing. And he went up to spy out and see what was happening. And he came back and he reported to those who'd sent them, "I would no sooner speak against the Holy Ghost than I would speak against this people." And what he had heard was this solemn singing. And there was such strength in it, the wisdom from those marginalized. And then in our own culture, we have, of course, the gift and the challenge of the African American spirituals. And these are songs that have tremendous transcendence to them, but we know now that they were focused on the immediate and they were code. We'll hear Deep River. And the desire to cross over the river is, yes, transcendent to the fullness of God's presence, but it also, the only way to realize that is also to find the freedom and to get across the river and into the Jordan, which meant being free. Father James Song.
Thank you, Steve. Very, very much. One river, many wells. Howard Thurman, American author, philosopher, theologian, educator, and civil rights leader, said, "It is my belief that in the presence of God, there is neither male nor female, white nor black, Gentile nor Jew, Protestant nor Catholic, Hindu, Buddhist, nor Muslim, but a human spirit stripped to the literal substance of itself before God. That is the presence of God." When we think about the many varied religions, we must also remember that our religions are really pretty recent compared to the earth, the ocean, the land. Humanity has been around, we think, maybe 2 million years. The earth has been here 14.4 billion years. Question, what religion did our ancestors practice for the 2 million years before us and our notion of modern religion? Thurman is very clear that we ought to be concerned with the beginnings. These questions will fuel our growth. We're learning now how our ancestors all came from Africa. Adam and Eve were Africans, we might say. A rebirth of wonder follows those who keep their curiosity about the origins alive. Hildegard von Bingen, Steve's already played one of her pieces, 13th century mystic. And she wrote, "O humans, when the stars and the creatures were being made, where were you? Did you ever give counsel to God concerning the making of those things?" Mickchild of Magdeburg says, "The truly wise person kneels at the feet of all creatures, of all creatures." Since this is believed that life, humanity, came from the sea, and we know through science that our blood imitates the salt water of the ocean, I think our souls are somewhere in there imitating the sea also, and that is our origin. Through history, culture so often shrinks our souls so that we can fit into a consumer mold or some other tribal size. Millions of years of history demand more humility about the immensity of the history of the earth and humanity, the immensity. All mystics with a deep sense of ecumenism tell us much about where our humility needs to be. The Indian mystic Kabir says to us, the God of the Hindus resides in a temple. The God of the Muslims resides in a mosque. Who resides there where there are no temples nor mosques? Remember when Jesus the Christ said to us, "Don't look here and there. The kingdom of heaven is among us all." As Kabir said, once you begin to experience his presence in all being, all debate comes to a naught. The 13th century Sufi mystic Hafez writes, "I have learned so much about God that I can no longer call myself a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, or a Jew." David Brower says that we need to tire of trashing wilderness. You know that creation spirituality is very eco-friendly, and it is a tenet of our belief and our motivation and passion to take care of our mother, the earth, while she takes care of us. We need to tire of trashing the wildness. It's not making us happy, and it's not making anybody happy. It's not making us healthy. It's making us miserable and despairing, killing trees, habitat, and animals, and separating ourselves from nature is making us all feel a bit crazy. We need to restore the earth because we need to save the wildness of it from which we came, from how we evolved, from where we were born, when we walked out of the ocean, however all that worked. Every single one of us, all of us, everywhere, in this room and everywhere else, possess a little fragment of the first bit of life on earth. Every single one of us has somewhere in us a little fragment of the first life on earth. Consequently, everything that's alive is related. A microscopic part of us is 3.5 billion years old. Rumi, the great mystic, Sufi mystic, said, "All religions, all this singing is one song. The differences are just illusion and vanity. The sun's light looks a little different on this wall than it does on that wall, but it is still one light." The facts are, either religion moves beyond its tribal past, or it has no chance of saving the world. The emerging church is gathering the scriptural, contemplative, scholarly, justice-oriented wisdom from every part of the body of what we would call the cosmic Christ from the very beginning of time. We are talking about deep ecumenism. Matthew Fox writes, "From Hinduism we hear, many are the paths of humans, but they all in the end come to me." In the Gita, God says, "I am the thread that runs through the pearls as in a necklace." So this evening, as we draw deeply from the mystical wisdom well, from the Christian tradition and from many other faiths as well, let us look deeply into ourselves. Let us listen deeply into one's own traditions and beliefs, what you believe, but look and listen deeply into the mystical well and find that God is like a mighty river that runs through all humanity, and there are many wells from which to draw the living water of divine wisdom. Jason.
Thank you, David. The 13th century Christian mystic, Meister Eckhart writes, "God is a great underground river that no one can stop and no one can dam up. This is the image that David and I worked with and worked from, this idea of God being a great underground river. So I hope you will hear that thread run through the different stories I'd like to share with you now. The first comes from the Upanishads, from Hinduism. In the Upanishads, there's a story of a father trying to teach his son something about the nature of divinity and the world. He told his son to put a handful of salt into a bucket of water. The boy did so, and soon after, he went to sleep. After breakfast the next day, the father told the little boy, "Bring me the salt that I gave you last night." The little boy looked and looked, but he could not find the salt anywhere in the bucket of water. The salt had dissolved. "I can't find it, Father," he said, distressed. "How does the water at the top of the bucket taste?" his father asked him. "It's salty." The boy's eyes lit up. "Pour a little off and tell me how the water in the middle of the bucket tastes." The boy did so and tasted it. "It's salty too," he responded. "How does it taste at the very bottom of the bucket?" asked his father. The boy poured off some more water and tasted it again. "Even saltier," he said, making a face. The father told the boy to toss the rest of the water out and to come and sit on his lap. When the boy wriggled up, he told his father, "I think the salt will always be in that water now." His father nodded and said, "Remember how you were asking me about God and why you could not see God?" The boy nodded. "The world is a bucket of water, and God is the salt. You cannot see it, but it flavors everything. This is the truth, my son. You are salty too." The Sufi mystics remind us that the ways to God are as many as the breaths of human beings. The ways to God are as many as the breaths of human beings. And now a story from the Sikh tradition. The roots of a truly interfaith approach to spirituality go all the way back to the 15th century, to the story of a cattle driver named Nanak. Nanak was born in Talwandi, a tiny village in what is now Pakistan. His father was an accountant for their Muslim landlord, and his mother was a pious Hindu woman. A headstrong boy who always followed his own drummer, Nanak was impatient with religious rituals and despised the Hindu caste system that ordered society. He also hated going to school and preferred to lose himself in contemplation. His father, tired of trying to coerce his education, finally sent him off to watch the herds, where he could lose himself in contemplation and still be of some use to his family. Nanak really tried to be a proper Hindu, but so much of the tradition was repellent to him that he eventually abandoned it. Then he tried Islam on for size, but finally decided that it did not quite fit him either. Each had so many rules, so many barriers that separated people from one another. If God was one, how could there be so many different religions, so many different castes? How could there be acceptable people and non-acceptable people? Nanak wondered after the herds, and he pondered these things. Then when he was 28 years old, an amazing thing happened. Leaving the herd and his fellow herdsmen to take a bath in a nearby stream, Nanak was gone for a long time. This was not unusual, and his workmates assumed he was simply lost in one of his reveries. But by nightfall, he still had not returned. They went out searching for him, but to no avail. Finally, they decided he must have drowned, and they gave him up for dead. Just then, After 3 days' absence, Nanak emerged from the wild, but he was not the same young man who had gone off to bathe. The story he told his relieved friends and family was incredible. He told them that while he was standing in the river, he was overwhelmed by the presence of the divine. A cup filled with sacred nectar was offered to him, and a voice commanded him, "This cup, Nanak, is the adoration of my name. Drink it, for I am with you and bless you. I will smile with favor upon anyone who remembers you. So go, rejoice in my name, and teach others to do as well. This is your calling." As the vision passed, Nanak came up out of the water and spoke the immortal words, "There is no Hindu, there is no Muslim." When he related the story to his friends, he explained, "God is neither Hindu nor Muslim, and the path I follow is God's." Nanak was not denying the truth of these religions, only the exclusiveness with which many of their devotees held them. God could be found in Islam and Hinduism, but the divine was limited to neither of them. Divinity transcended every tradition, and every tradition revealed a way of being faithful and of reaching spiritual fulfillment. True to his calling, Nanak took his message to the streets. He dressed in a mishmash of styles drawn from the traditional wardrobes of both Hindus and Muslims. Instead of writing laws and doctrines, Nanak wrote love songs to the divine and traveled far and wide with his Muslim friend Mardana, who played the rebeck while Nanak sang. He sang to people of every tribe, every caste, every faith, making no distinction between them, but offering to all his songs of love for the divine. He played at mosques and temples, for Buddhist sanghas and Sufi schools, at festivals and in the marketplaces. He told Muslims to be faithful to the Quran and charged Hindus to be true to their traditions, but also preached that the truth of the divine transcended every system of belief. He preached an egalitarianism that was threatening to some, for he was fiercely critical of the caste system and insisted that men and women were equal in the eyes of the divine and ought to be in the eyes of the law. Although he met with some resistance, overwhelmingly, Nanak succeeded in bringing people together wherever he went. Hindus, Muslims, Christians, and Buddhists alike crowded around to hear him sing, forgetting for a while their differences and finding themselves inspired by his vision of their common humanity and their equal standing before divinity. And finally, as David started with the African-American mystic Howard Thurman, I'll end with a brief statement from Howard Thurman. The goal and the source of the river are the same, the sea. So it is with life in God. Life is like that. The goal of life is God. The source of life is God. That out of which life comes is that into which life goes. God is the goal of our life, the end of all our seeking, the meaning of all our striving. Amen. So at this time, we'll invite you to come up one at a time and make your way to our well. And you'll see some strings coming out of the well. We invite you just to take one and draw it. And if you would, turn your star towards the camera so our folks zooming with us can see, and then read what's on the star. So David's going to demonstrate for us, and it'll be an opportunity for us to come and draw from the mighty river of God.
From the mighty river of God, I have chosen a star that says atheist. Please
So-
come forward and draw a star.
So as you feel Ready? Come forward one at a time and draw from the mighty river of God.
I have drawn from the river of God humanism.
I have drawn from the river Wicca, the pentacle.
The mighty river of God.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Taoism.
Thank you.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Christian Reformed Church.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn communist.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Mormon.
Thank you. It's Australian Aboriginal.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Australian
Aboriginal.
Aboriginal.
Thank you. From the mighty river of God, I have drawn questions.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Christianity Orthodox cross. God keeps us.
There it is. Thank you.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Shinto. And by the way, these are your stars to keep.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Baha'i.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Buddhism.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Judaism.
Monarch. From the mighty river of God, I have drawn menorah.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn paganism.
From the mighty river of God, I've drawn Jainism.
If the stars kind of get hooked up together, sometimes it kind of represents how connected a lot of this stuff is. It gets all wrapped up in itself.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Sikhism.
Okay. From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Orthodox cross.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn a Celtic cross. Perhaps I wasn't allowed anything else.
From the mighty river of God, I have drawn Unitarian Universalism.
Anybody else? Thank you. In putting these stars together, Rita and I found there were infinite numbers of symbols. And what's interesting about looking at all these symbols over 3 or 4 days, you begin to get kind of sort of a softer tone about you. They all radiate something. You can see a lot of them together, they radiate a lot. So, thank you.
It's intriguing how things sometimes flow together. Flow together. Sure, like that. And the last source of musical wisdom is simply within music itself. I think reflecting or carrying on something that's been a true theme, and that is the growth towards greater wholeness, the movement away from tribalism. There was reference to love, and then love being of the essence. And sometimes a piece of music will find greater and greater depths as it goes along. And so this last one is simply a folk tune, which I think many of us know. It began, it was Oh Wally Wally. It was an English song of unrequited love. And as all such songs, it ended unhappily. But people hearing deeper things there and larger things. And it's a song now just in my own tradition, which as I know is used at a time of gathering at the table, not for love that is lost, but for love that's always there. It's a hymn too, which is sung for 1 Corinthians 13, 3 things abide forever, the greatest of which is love. And yet it began with a song about unrequited love, but moved to something far richer.
At this time in our service, we celebrate the joys, we reflect on our concerns. Each of you has 3 pebbles, I believe, at your chair. And I'm going to invite you now to come up and offer your prayers. These are your prayer pebbles. As you drop them into the water, little bubbles rising to the surface. Are those prayers indeed being opened up, being shared by each and every one of us? We have 2 vases. I'm going to ask Kathy. Kathy and I are going to begin. Then she's going to play some music, and I would invite you to come and use both, please, of the vases. offer your prayers. Will you join me in the prayer written by another mystic and wisdom keeper, Julian of Norwich? Joining our voices, all shall be well. All shall be well. All manner of things shall be well. All shall be well. As I asked at the beginning that you remember this time last year, I want to thank each and every one of you, whether you're in this room with us this evening, whether you're Zooming with us, or those folks who have not had an opportunity to do either. I want to thank each and every one of you for your generosity. It is because of not only your time and your talent and your treasure, but the energy that you have given to us, you have shared with us throughout this past year, that has enabled us to not just survive, but to thrive. And I know the board are so grateful. There was a lot of buzz in this room this evening, and it sounded so wonderful. So if you have not had a chance, we have the offering star by the door. For those of you who are at home or Zooming, you can certainly make a contribution online. That information is included with each of the Zoom emails that go out on Saturdays. So joining our voices again, let us offer these thoughts, this prayer from a Taizé chant. Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas, Deus ibi est. Live in charity and steadfast love. Live in charity. God will dwell with you. If everyone would please stand for the invocation of directions.
Battery 100%. Connected to iPhone.
We welcome the great mystery and the creator of all things, Wakantanka, to be present among us. We welcome the breath maker, the old man, the spider grandmother, and the great raven. We invoke white buffalo woman, everywhere being, sky chief, and silver fox. We welcome the Christ, Muhammad, Buddha, and Shiva. We welcome the stones and the plants and all animals. In one of his visions, the great Lakota Oglala Sioux medicine man, Black Elk, describes himself as being taken to the center of the earth and to the central mountain of the world. Mythologist Joseph Campbell notes that an axis mundi, the central point, the pole around which all revolves, the point where stillness and movement are together, is the theme in all religion. Campbell viewed Black Elk's statement as a way to understand worldwide religions. Black Elk saw that all was on the great circle. He saw all was connected to the mighty river of God, of divine wisdom. The grandmothers and the grandfathers of the four directions tell us that the Holy One's signature can be found on every leaf of every tree. And I quote, "Every rock and tree and creature has a name. That name is the name of God." And I quote, "You have noticed that everything an Indian does is in a circle, and that it is because the power of the world always works in circles, and everything tries to be round. The sky is round, and I've heard the earth is round like a ball, and so are the stars. The wind in its greatest power whirls. Birds make their nest in circles, for theirs is the same religion as ours. The life of a man and woman is a circle from childhood to childhood." We burn sage to heal any disconnection we have with our brothers and sisters who experience God differently than us. The smoke constantly transforms into infinite shapes and reminds us of the infinite ways to connect to our personal source of divine wisdom. We hear the beat of the Tibetan shaman's tribal drum and experience this drum as inviting the divine wisdom of healing. The flute pierces our fear of the infinite ways of experiencing God's divine wisdom. Throughout this service, we are invited to allow the music to enter our hearts and feel the invitation to touch another culture's divine wisdom, although different, but also the same.
Facing east, the grandmothers and the grandfathers of the East tell us we are all the center of the world. The circle, the great river, has no beginning and no end. Altogether, may we grow in grace, may we grow in gratitude, may we grow in wisdom, that those who believe differently from us are a part of the great river of divine wisdom flowing through all things.
Facing south, the grandmothers and the grandfathers of the South ask us to clear our hearts so that we may experience the mystery of divine connection. All together, please. May we grow in gratitude. May we grow in wisdom, that those who believe differently from us are a part of the great river of divine wisdom flowing through all of us.
Quarter turn to the right, facing west. The grandmothers and the grandfathers of the West want us to know that the truth flows through the great circle and has been inscribed into the substance of all things. Altogether, may we grow in grace, may we grow in gratitude, may we grow in wisdom, that those who believe differently from us are a part of the great river of divine wisdom flowing through all of us.
Quarter turn, facing north. The grandmothers and the grandfathers of the North want us to know that the Great Circle is not a place or a thing. The Great Circle is who we are. All together, please. May we grow in grace. May we grow in gratitude. May we grow in wisdom, that those who believe differently from us are part of the great river of divine wisdom flowing through all of us.
Facing center, the grandmothers and the grandfathers of the center space want us to look around the flowing circle and see our brothers and sisters as adding their divine wisdom to that which flows through us. Altogether, may we grow in grace, may we grow in gratitude, may we grow in wisdom, that those who believe differently from us are a part of the great river of divine wisdom flowing through all of us. Namaste.
You are invited to join in the way of tea, gathering heart and mind and spirit for a meditation on sweet balance. If you would, find a comfortable position in your chair, perhaps with your feet on the floor, spaced slightly apart. Your back straight, resting on and supported by the back of your chair. Your hands resting just above your knees or together in your lap, one hand resting in the other with palms open. Then close your eyes. Spend a moment resting in this position, acquainting yourself with the rhythm of your breathing and the vibration of soft background music. Now, if you would, imagine that the basket of sweets is being readied for serving. First, shared between the servers. Then one server begins to move around the circle, stopping in front of each person, inviting each to reach into the basket and select one of the sweets. The server now stands in front of you, holds the basket for you to select your sweet. As you peer inside the basket, you wonder, what will the sweet be this evening? Imagine what it might be. Having made your selection, the server moves on, and for a moment you are left holding the sweet between your fingers. Imagine how it feels. The sturdy cakiness of a cookie, the soft cushiness of a piece of candy. Then you either take a bite, or if tiny enough, pop it into your mouth. The result is an unleashing of a subtle sweetness or an explosion of delightful decadence, made even more intense as you continue to chew, each bite being more pleasurable than the last. Finally, you swallow. You can feel the sugary concoction slip down your throat and begin to wind its way downward. A slow movement of sweetening, filling nooks and crannies of your body with the sensuality of goodness, leaving you aglow in the honeydew of gentleness and kindness. Settle in this space and spend a bit more time, feeling the sweetness trickle into the center of your being, savoring in your heart and mind and spirit, reflecting on what such goodness means to you.
Continuing in the way of tea. You are now invited to gather heart and mind and spirit for a meditation on bitter balance. Remaining in a comfortable position in your chair with eyes closed, again, spend a moment acquainting yourself with the rhythm of your breathing and the vibration of the soft background music. Now, if you would, imagine the tea being prepared and ready for serving. First, shared between the servers. Then, both begin to move around the circle, stopping in front of each person, offering the tray filled with small glass tea vessels, inviting each to select one. Having made your selection, the server moves on, and for a moment, you are holding a tiny chalice before your lips, before lifting it to your lips. As you move it toward your lips, you get a whiff of the musky fragrance of the freshly brewed green tea. Imagine that aroma as you breathe in and exhale slowly. Your thoughts shift to wonderings about the brew. How strong is the brew? Is it too warm? Too cool? Then you take a small sip. It is not too warm or too cool, but rigorously strong. Imagine that as the liquid rests on your tongue. It is almost as though every taste bud has become hyper alert in violent protest of the pungent flavor, seemingly more intense since the tastiness of the sweet lingers. The bitterness begins its invasion, determined to overcome any residual lusciousness. And then you swallow. But the taste has lost much of its harshness. Instead, you experience a nectar flavored with the essence of both sweet and bitter. These two ingredients complementing each other, and when contemplated together, represent a symbol of harmony and balance. Settle in this space and spend a little time letting harmony and balance wind their way to the center of your being, letting your heart and mind and spirit be refreshed in the letting go of one versus the other, reflecting on the peacefulness of restful soul. The server again stands in front of you. You place your teacup on the tray. It is empty, but you are not.
Going to invite Emily to come back up and extinguish our community candle as we offer our closing prayer. Joining our voices, and though we extinguish our community candle, we do not extinguish the warmth of community, the spirit of gratitude, the fire of commitment, and our shared compassion during this time together as community. The light of hope, hope for change that brings new blessings into our lives and the lives of those around us, remains and will continue to burn brightly. We carry the light of hope in our hearts until we are together again. Amen. I'm going to invite everyone to please stand as we share this blessing and sending out with one another. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the love of God surround us everywhere, everywhere we may go until we meet again. Look forward to seeing everyone on the 14th of March, and that will be the day that we set our clocks forward. Great. Thank you all so much.